Hi, and welcome back to Coffee Break session number 2, where anything and everything goes. So obviously I'm joined by my co-hosts here, Unsu and Santosh. This is Santosh's first time being here with us, where I'm sure he's in a pickle because he can't figure out what to talk about. So we're going to just let it flow anyway. I actually want to start with something interesting and kind of dramatic. I have a theme actually for today, but Unsu, you have some ideas, so let's also weave that in. So I actually saw this book title, and it's called Broken Dreams, and it's actually about midlife crisis. But I don't actually want to talk about the midlife crisis part unless we come to that. But I like this idea about broken dreams because I think Santosh, you're really young here, but for me, also we are midlife now. I reached 40 this year, so I think it's like a pertinent theme for me to visit and to think about, in terms of what's going to happen for the next, let's hope maybe another 40 years of our lives, right? So in any case, right, what also sparked this theme for me is that, so as you guys know, Chi Sun has a cafe, and I'm really mad because he stole my idea. No, so I really had this idea about having a cafe, truth be told, and he pretty much modeled off it. Of course, he has no idea about my plans, but the idea is that I really wanted something where there will be a reading section, so there'll be books there, obviously. I really wanted something where people could have the opportunity to give presentations and talks. And of course, there'll be, food and drinks. But more importantly, even for me, I wanted to have cats and dogs, all around. So it's going to be like, a synthesis of everything, like, pet cafe, reading cafe, presentation, and food and drinks. But anyway, he already has this right now. So that's good. I mean, best of luck for him also. So anyway, I just thought, right, just to kick it off, right, I want to ask you guys, like I said, to the theme of broken dreams, right, what did you want to be when you were young? Did you have some kind of aspiration, and did you meet up? I mean, clearly what I'm trying to mark out here is maybe you didn't meet up to it, but I'm curious to hear what you guys wanted to be when you were young. So take it away, Ongsu. Let me hear what you wanted to be when.
I think when I was 11 years old, I discovered the dream of becoming a writer. I fell in love with fantasy books, starting with Tolkien's The Hobbit. And every day after school, I would come back and I would try and work on my own stories.
Oh, cool.
Even all the way through to Sec 2, I think I would write stories to share with classmates. And it gave me a lot of satisfaction to write something and then actually, have people appreciate it. And I'm not sure what happened to that dream. I think along the way as you get older, I discovered philosophy. I think in some ways, philosophy took my style of thinking in a different direction. And actually, if you look at history, there are very few philosophers who were also very good novelists.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Somehow, like Jean-Paul Sartre, he was one of the few. But even then, you could probably only pick a few of his novels that were really of a high standard. And, I think the problem is that when philosophers try to write novels, they tend to focus too much on the ideas and not so much on the story.
Yeah.
So that's just, I guess, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of a dream that I still haven't fulfilled yet. But as you say, hopefully I have enough years left to maybe.
But do you have an idea in mind? Is there some idea residing in your head that you want to write about, or do you still feel like, okay, do you even picture yourself? I actually went to research this actually about the writing process. So because I want to write a novel, I still want to write a novel. I have an idea. I have in fact 2 ideas. Still, in the burner, I have my character Bible, I have my plot outline, but when I really sat down to write it, I just looked at it, I thought it's crap, man. It's just, and I know a lot of writers say the first draft is like shit, so you got to accept that and just move on, but I just couldn't get past an impasse, so that's one obstacle for me. But what I want to ask you is do you have concepts in mind already, in terms of what you want to write about?
I have a few. I mean, there have been some ideas that have been sitting in my head since the age of 15, that are just buried pretty deep.
Yeah.
And more recently, I think I've had a few like science fiction ideas. So I would love to have like write a collection of science fiction short stories. But I think it's easy to have ideas.
Yeah.
I think it's much harder to
write.
execute it
Yeah.
well. And writing is, I think, one of those things where there's a saying like a lot of people, you like the idea of having written something, but you don't actually enjoy the writing process because the writing process is very like solitary. I mean, you're sitting by yourself for hours on end without any contact with anyone. And what I found is it's so easy to make excuses like, oh, I have to go get the groceries, I have to run an errand, you know, and because sitting there confronting the blank page, it's quite agonizing.
Yeah, I have this quote in mind, right, from Stephen King, you know, and he said something like, unless you're writing for 4 to 6 hours a day, you're not a writer. But that being said, you know, even though that's very much true because he's such a prodigious writer, right, and he's constantly producing works, you know, I guess every single year he has something new. But to many other writers, you know, they don't necessarily follow that kind of regimen. I mean, even for them, if they keep to say 2 hours a day or something, they said it's still good enough to get something out because as long as you got some consistent habit, you can write it through. You know, everyone's journey is clearly different. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Santosh, you know, what about you? What's something you wanted to be when you were young?
I didn't want to be a writer, but I wanted to be a spy or a detective. That was that was the earliest recollection of my dreams. So I used to watch or read The Famous Five, Nancy Drew
Oh
and
wow! Okay.
the Hardy Boys, if I'm not wrong.
No, I love the Famous Five.
Right,
Famous
right.
Five, yeah. So they would transport me into this like amazing mystery and puzzle. Yeah, and like there'll be lots of suspense and we'll solve a mystery or a puzzle. Yeah. But I think I'm kind of doing something quite similar now, but it's about unlocking like the mysteries of consciousness and the human psyche or like the self. Yeah. So that's a mystery to me till today, right? Like who am I? Yeah, and that's a mystery that I'm still trying to solve, and I think it's going to be a lifelong pursuit to even solving this.
How long did you hold on to that idea about being a detective? Like because I'm just trying to imagine it, right? Let's say you're done with secondary school, you went to junior college, I assume, right? So did you still hold on to that idea? Or
No. That was childhood. So I think maybe from like 5 years old to 10, 11 or 12.
Okay,
so when I was still in primary school, I used to be in this very fantasy-like world.
Right.
Very idyllic, very fantasy-like. And I think I didn't really care about like world issues or social issues. I was in a bubble. Yeah, so I think until the bubble was broken when I was maybe in secondary school, then I looked at more current affairs and real issues. But before that, I didn't have the connection or the empathy for like social issues or humanitarian problems.
But here's the funny thing. So you like let's put it this way: mystery stuff, crime. But you don't watch any of that right now, right?
No.
Not even reading a novel. Let's say by who's someone I can think of? I don't know, John Grisham. I mean, I don't know much crime writers, but
Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code. I don't know.
I don't know. I think like the books I read in the past 5-6 years were like very spiritual related. So I was trying to like understand a bit more about myself and like so I delved very deeply into like books related to Christianity, then Hinduism, and then Buddhism, and then Taoism. So I think that was my staple. It was more like spiritual philosophy or metaphysics or theology or religion. So I think that was like the staple for me. I tuned out completely from from movies and Netflix shows and all of that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to jump to that later because you've shown yourself to be really exceptional among the three of us. Okay, I guess I can go into mine. So I guess it's going to be a bit of a surprise. So you just now said like when you were really young, right, like primary school age, you thought of being a detective. So if I use my primary school age, it's funny, right? I actually have this very strong recollection of watching Backdraft by Kurt Russell. I mean, Kurt Russell was the actor. And it's a movie about firemen. So I actually wanted to be a fireman when I was young. But then, as I move on to like secondary school, then I realized I wanted something more from it because it was just a movie, right? And I realized that I really wanted to be an actor, and I kept that quite long in terms of my ambitions because after secondary school, I didn't want to go to a junior college. I resented having to wear a uniform, and regimen of being in a school system. So I went to mass communication at Ngee Ann, and that's where I picked up some film and TV education. But at the time, I really wanted very hard to be an actor. Yeah, and I knew that if I didn't get to attend Ngee Ann Poly mass communication program, I was going to ask my parents to just sponsor me going to LaSalle College of Arts and do something art related. Yeah, and actually speaking about like even your writing ambition, like when I was really young, primary 6 I remembered. I don't know why at the time I did like Star Wars, and I basically wrote a fan fiction on Star Wars, and I took all the characters and I put myself into it, I put my friends into it, I put my father into it, so he was like a Darth Vader. Yeah, and when I was in secondary school, I loved X-Files. David Duchovny was one of my favorite actors. So I even created my own like X-Files. Yeah, and I have this obsession with Aliens and Predator, the Fox movie franchise. So I even wrote fan fiction on that as well. So that's how like imaginative I was as a kid. Yeah, and I could tell like I really wanted to just get into acting. And at the time, I don't know whether you still remember. Maybe you might remember this. I don't know about Santosh because you're younger. But there used to be this thing called the Fame Awards. So it's where on Channel 5 and Channel 8. Channel 8 I think still runs it. Essentially, it's kind of like a talent recruitment contest. So they will get people to sign up and participate. So they go through like a contest to become a credible actor, and then that's where they get a contract with MediaCorp or TCS. So Channel 8 I think still has their practice. Channel 5 had it for a little while, if I'm not wrong, and that's where Pierre Peng was actually solicited. That's where he made his mark. Yeah, and I really had like the idea to join. Yeah. So but in the end, I am where I am now. So that's kind of a broken dream. Yeah. So yeah, we could basically, write our own mystery sort of TV series starring Douglas. Santosh, I'm curious, who's your, would you consider the world's greatest detective?
Who would I consider the world's greatest detective? Wow.
Fictional, real.
I think at this stage, right, I'm listening a lot to and I'm following a spiritual scientist who is unlocking the mysteries of the human mind. Yeah, so this is a detective of the human mind. So he examines the human mind and understands like the nature of it. Where does it go wrong? How do I harness the potential of the human mind? Even this whole human body, like they're like secrets that are just kept within this human body to be unlocked. Yeah, so there is a rishi in India with whom I do this silent retreats once every 2 months. Yeah, his name is Rishi Vidyadhar, and he's in India, and he does this silent retreats where he allows us to experience this. Yeah, so it's not just theory, but through a 3-day silent retreat, we experience the inner workings of the human mind. Yeah, so that's what I would call a detective, like in the spiritual sense. Yeah, and in ancient Vedic India, they used to be called the rishis. They are spiritual scientists, and so they study this whole thing called human body, human mind, and human consciousness. And they write at great lengths, and they share this knowledge down the generations. Yeah, and so it's been preserved, and he actually now teaches this globally. Yeah, so he would be someone I'm interested to even be an apprentice under, like spend some time with. Yeah, I think that would be like a dream come true for me. You have to just spend time with him.
But that's possible, right? Like, I mean, I'm just assuming that you need to see him personally. Where's he based? India?
He's based in India.
So you have to go there. You probably have to spend quite a good amount of time there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you either like work for him, like as a volunteer, or actually you can just tune in through live shows, live telecasts through YouTube. So you don't even need to be there present. Like he can help you experience what he is teaching from any part of the world. So it's really accessible. It's broken down geographical barriers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is actually getting to a topic that we could talk about mentorship, right? What about you, Angsu? Like he has a spiritual mentor, but do you have a mentor? Do you have someone that you look up to? It doesn't have to be, at this manner where you have a session with that person, but perhaps, even just through reading someone's book, reading that person's works, do you have someone in mind?
There's no one person that stands out. I
Yeah.
have like several, and every year I'm discovering new ones.
Yeah.
But one of them would be Charles Eisenstein, who we've talked about before, and I'm hoping to talk about one of his books, Sacred Economics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think everything he writes I find quite inspiring. And yeah, there's mentors everywhere you look. Like there's this guy called Brett Victor, who used to do user interface design for Apple.
Oh, okay.
And I really love his talks because it's really deep, and he really like questions, how we can improve, even just how we write scientific papers. But yeah, no, I really would love to find like a physical mentor that I can, be with and work with, because I think we could all benefit from that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like you, I also have a couple that I can think of. And, well, like for me, that's the funny thing. Like, I realized that with the way we're talking, right? I realized we don't talk about anyone that's really real to us, in the sense that you didn't say your father, your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousin. So I find it quite interesting. I mean, there's no right or wrong about this, but we are actually nominating people that aren't related to us, and in some sense you may not even know we exist, right? So for example, the two writers that you just mentioned, like for me, I guess I actually consider Noam Chomsky a mentor, because I have at least some personal correspondence with him, and he does respond to emails, and I mean, even though it's not like he knows me personally, but I think it's nice to have this person who is so well known, so busy, respond to my own queries, and then in terms of like, so I'm not spiritual like you are, but within philosophy, like Brian McGee stands out to me as a kind of spiritual kind of mentor, right? Because he's not spiritual as well. He's pretty much atheist or agnostic. But when I read his work, and I tend to reread it sometimes, like the last book that he wrote, Ultimate Questions, and the earlier one, Confessions of a Philosopher. I mean, that book is so thick that you can just keep revisiting it and just pick up bits and pieces of wisdom. So that's kind of like my process, But that being said, like even right now on my Kindle, I have so many things I'm reading, and sometimes I just gravitate and move on to the next person in terms of looking for some kind of specialized areas of knowledge, But okay, so the funny thing, right, on this topic, it actually coincides with a question I do have for you guys today. So, what is the most famous person you ever met? And you're a filmmaker, so I want to hear some interesting answers from you. But Santosh, you can go first.
Wow, the most famous person I've ever met.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
They can be local, global, don't matter, Yeah. To some degree, you are expecting our audience to at least have some idea who he is, whether it's local or global. And maybe Angsu, if you have one already, just go for it.
I mean, it was very superficial, but I have
Sure.
met like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Cindy
okay.
Crawford.
Okay.
Because there was a Planet Hollywood opening, here.
Yeah, that's years ago.
Years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I actually went to some opening party
Oh wow.
where they were signing autographs and
Okay.
whatever, so
No wait, so tell us about the whole thing, like the whole experience of being at the opening party of Planet Hollywood.
I think what's interesting is that like a lot of these movie stars are a lot smaller in real life. Like Sylvester Stallone was there.
Oh,
and he's
yeah,
actually
yeah.
quite a short person.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan was there.
Yep.
Jackie Chan was really nice. I mean, you kind of get a feel for what their personality is
Right.
like, right? But yeah, as I said, it's so superficial and it's not any kind of meaningful interaction. So I'm trying to think of what like the most famous person that I've actually had real interactions with.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not anyone famous that people would know, but like there's a cinematographer named Christopher Doyle who shoots a lot of Wong Kar-wai's movies.
Oh.
So I met him at film festivals. And then like I've also met like the casting director in LA who did like all of Tarantino's films and David Lynch's films. Her name's Johanna Ray. So she was actually the casting director for one of my films.
Right.
And then so I would be in her office doing casting for my film, and then she would be like, get a phone call and just like, hey Unsu, sorry I have to take this call, it's like Tarantino. So it's like little moments like that. I was like, wow,
Right,
okay,
right.
I'm really kind of
Yeah.
in the center of it, you know.
Yeah. So what are they like, and what's the work like actually for these people? I mean, like they're working for someone so big and famous. Like, is it stressful? I mean, what do you know about how is it like working for?
I actually
such
think
a-
for most of the people who work in the film industry, it's they're passionate about the work. You know, like I think when they're actually working, they really enjoy it. It's more like the business aspects of the film industry that I think can be unpleasant. Dealing with agents, trying to get your film sold. But when you're actually working on the craft itself, there's definitely a sense from everyone involved that you're working on together on something special,
Right.
and trying to create that magic.
Yeah. I echoed that sentiment when we first started this channel, because like I said, I wanted to be an actor initially, but the reason for it really is because I do like this movie making experience. I feel there's something quite different from not just different in itself, but like if you talk about it on a level where how individuals collaborate and work together on a film set is very different from like being in a corporate setting, because there is clearly going to be, I mean, there's probably still some sense of a implicit hierarchy here, right? There's the director, the producer, but somehow you don't feel like if say the stage manager or if the wardrobe designer ventures an opinion, you don't feel like it's a devalued opinion, like because you're just a wardrobe designer, your opinions are not as well deserved. Somehow there is that respect of like equality. I feel that, at least from my experience, right, and it's a very limited one on a film set, and yeah, I feel like there's that kind of magic that just isn't easily replicable in other settings. Yeah. So what about you? Have you thought about it already?
I've never had any desire to want to meet someone famous from the film industry. Yeah, but I've had a lot of desires to like go to eco villages
Okay.
or ashrams, like either in Germany, in Europe, or in India. So I mean, like I like to keep it low key. I like to go and like there is like this small town in India called Udupi near Mangalore. I've been there twice, and there's this amazing they call him a guru or like a spiritual master, and he actually has created an ashram for free for poor, disadvantaged children from all over India to come, and there's free lodging, free food, and free education, and he's training them to be the next generation of civil servants for India. So I spent like a week or two at his ashram, and there's amazing nature, beautiful scenery, and amazing interaction with kids. Like those are the more meaningful interactions for me.
Yeah.
And I like just being together in the presence of a spiritual master who is just so selfless and so dedicated to service for humanity. Yeah, like those are the moments I actually crave for. Like he's totally incognito. No one knows him. No one talks about him. But I just like the simplicity with which he leads his life. He doesn't want any publicity, no fame. He wants it low key. Yeah, and when I'm with him, I just feel this authenticity and genuine connection. And I now see this like in a lot of invisible people all over our society. So like that, maybe that craving to be like famous or to want to be associated with someone famous has kind of like died down. But those are the kind of moments I relish and I would look forward to. There is another spiritual, like humanitarian leader. His name is Sri Ravi Shankar. He's the founder of the Art of Living Foundation. He's done an amazing amount of good work. Like 450 million people have benefited from the wellness and relaxation classes he's given, and yeah, I've like come close to him, but I've never had a one-on-one exchange with him.
Right.
Yeah, but he's probably like someone I would want to have a one-on-one exchange with, and like yeah, just like an intimate conversation. Yeah. So yeah, that's my version.
No,
of,
that's good. And actually, even when I posed that question, I wasn't insinuating that we want to be near someone famous. It's clearly not. I mean, I meant in an unintentional manner, or maybe even, but perchance, you could have met someone famous.
Yeah.
But anyway, before I talk about mine, because now you actually open up a very interesting area of inquiry. So you mentioned about how, sorry, I didn't get his name again, but the first one, person you mentioned,
in
the ashram.
In ashram, right?
Yeah. Sorry, what's this person's name again?
His name
this
is
incognito person.
This incognito person.
Yeah.
So his Shantaram Bandakar. Yeah.
Okay.
Maharaj. So yeah, you
Maharaj.
can just call him Shantaram.
Shantaram.
Yeah.
Okay, so this Shantaram, right? So my question, is for both of you to answer as well, because I think this gets into some philosophy. So why do you think these people aren't revert? I mean, you make it sound like he seems to deliberately want to be in the shadows, right? And I get it, when people are exercising some kind of charitable deed, the intention is not to publicize about it and make themselves famous because of it. Clearly, they also feel that in speaking to their own moral values, right? It's not about publicity that I'm doing here. But at the same time, in this world that we exist right now, and even I'm fascinated just hearing your anecdote about him. But why isn't this person well known? Why isn't there perhaps a media system or a pop culture system, right, that actually tries to elevate the status of such individuals? I mean, what's your take on it? And do you think actually the more important question is, do you think it corrodes the spirit of their work if they became more famous? Even if it wasn't something that they were seeking, right? But let's pretend that he sets up a YouTube channel and he gets millions of subscribers, and he's starting to put up videos about himself and his work. I mean, do you think that actually starts to corrode the message of or the purity of the practice? I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, personally, I feel it does corrode a little bit. Like, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it gives you access to many other people you can help. But on the other hand, right, I feel like in this whole idea of power play, there are still people who are marginalized and who are oppressed in our society, who would have a lot of comfort and feel like a lot at ease when they're with someone who is not so famous, and with whom they can have no fear of just saying whatever they want or revealing their deepest and their darkest fears. Because I think this person is out there to mirror that actually I am just as ordinary as you are, and you don't need to strive to achieve a level of fame before you start doing good. Look at me, I'm doing good just with the very little fame I have. And he's trying to model that. To tell us that we don't need to wait until we're famous before we do something. Just with the little we have, we can give a lot. And it's usually those with little fame, with little resources, who are actually, in a way, more generous. It's kind of a paradox of life that plays out. It's something that I myself have tremendous amount of difficulty grappling with. It's the way this whole world is set up. So that's a very simple answer or analysis, but let me think about this deeper.
I'm definitely with Santosh on this. I, myself wouldn't want fame. And if this show actually never hits 5,000 viewers, I'm out of here.
Oh gosh.
And
you just spelled the end of our show.
I think a theme that comes up every now and then with us is this phrase, small is beautiful, and I really believe that. And I think one of the inspirations too is the science of fractals. Because if you take fractals, something that is very small, it can be replicated as a pattern, right? So, what we're doing here as far as modeling a style of conversation, and putting it out there in a public space like YouTube, we're just modeling something which we're hoping that other people can take and sort of use that pattern somewhere else. But I don't necessarily need us to like be this big thing that sucks in everyone's attention, right? So yeah, I think of it in terms of fractals, I think.
Yeah, you know the funny thing is that as I'm watching the both of you talk, right, I just realized that you regard him as a mentor as well. So actually, Unsu, the question
Which
is...
makes me very uncomfortable. By the way.
No, but here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you said about the channel, if we garner 5,000 views, you're out of here. But what if those 5,000 views, right? I mean, you garnered 5,000 views because people look up to you, people listen to you, and there can be other me Santoshes out there who look up to you, who would eventually see in you something that's respectable and something to model off, which you just mentioned. I mean, wouldn't that actually further incentivize you to keep the show on and to actually see how important you are? You know, despite, you know, like what you said, you're not seeking fame nor notoriety, but it has earned you this spot, right? And so shouldn't you use it for a force for good? That's how I pose it to you.
Yeah, and I think it's a difficult question, right? Like I don't think anyone should be put up on a pedestal, and I think if I started getting the feeling that people were putting me up on a pedestal, I would seek to correct that somehow, right? And in some ways, it's almost like, okay, if I've developed this role or this card, I would love to be able to just pass this card on to someone else and okay, now it's your turn. It's like we just take turns. You know, like no one is really permanently in that position. But I do agree that like there's a certain responsibility, right? Like in some ways, it's very disappointing when you see good people out there abdicate a certain position or responsibility and allow, like, you know, people with baser intentions to take over that you know, influence, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have to depend on the context. But yeah, I'm hoping that if, you know, like that I would have the opportunity to share whatever influence I have with other people that are just as worthy of it.
Yeah, actually, in what you just mentioned, that last bit, it reminded me of the quote from Schopenhauer, actually, where he talks about how riches and fame sucks like man's soul, or something like that. I don't have the quote in my head, but it's something about the idea that the more you receive it, the more hungry you get for more of it. Yeah. But I want to give you a good counter example, let's put it that way. Greta Thunberg, I mean, she's famous, and not because she seeked it, right? Not that she sought for it, but she became famous actually through, obviously, a collective efforts of many people around the world. And you know, there's always, you know, the sense that people look up to her, not for content guidance, because she's not a scientist, right? But she has certain sayings, certain ways of perceiving and of understanding climate change, and of being that spirit of fierce advocacy. And in that sense, right, like she is a famous person. She has not let it got to her head. I understand, of course, obviously there's always all sorts of manners or criticisms against her. And then sometimes I feel that a lot of it is very ill-spirited, because they don't recognize that no matter what, she is a young girl. She is someone that has, she's autistic. So there's a special condition we need to recognize in her, and that makes her who she is. And the idea is that if anything, we need to foster that kind of understanding, right? That these are the kind of role models we want to have, and we should promote more of. Yeah, because now there's only one Greta Thunberg, and more important thing about her also is that, like, when she did her protest at one of the, you know, the UN meetings, I can't remember which particular year, but should be slightly before COVID, before 2020. I mean, she had one segment where she allowed indigenous youth leaders to stand up and take her spot and to you know, speak their piece. And I think that's very valiant of her, and it shows a lot, right? Like, I can use that fame for myself, but instead she actually pushed it aside and said it's not about me, it's about all these other people that I'm standing in solidarity with. And I think people miss that also about her. So it's not like she's on the power hungry craze to make herself famous. Yeah. So
I think that's beautiful because there's something I learned, like even in the spiritual realm, and what we notice and what we need to teach kids or the next generation is for them to sense in any social setting where there are concentrations of power and where there are lacunas of power, where power is devoid or there's a cavity of power. And once you sense this quite intuitively, it's your duty and role is to help distribute power.
yeah.
Yeah. So from areas where there's concentration, distribute it. And if you hold on to, if you are a person where there's power, it's your role to model the distribution of power to where there's less power. Yeah. And if we try to do this, I think the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, thanks for actually just making it very succinct for me to also say that this is actually what I look for in any leader. So if someone were to ask me like, okay, what kind of political leader you look up to, that's probably my first answer. Well, someone's going to distribute power, not someone who's going to keep it for himself, right? Or make it more centralized, or to make it more authoritarian, which obviously speaks a lot about my political choices here. But that's a good answer, right? Because I think it goes back to also like the very first video that we did, and you asked me something about if you put trust in the people, what was the phrase again? That saying?
If you trust the people will be trustworthy.
Right. Yeah. And I've I answered it on the spot on that day because you sprung it on me spontaneously. Yeah. But I think to some degree it's not a truism. It's something that it's malleable. It can be both true and false, but you can live up to the truthness of that statement. But you got to make it happen. Whether it's through deliberate political processes or transformation of cultural values. So yeah. What do you think about what I said about Greta?
Yeah, no, I think Greta is such a powerful figure in today's world. I almost compare her to like a Joan of Arc figure. And in some ways, she was the catalyst for my own awakening to activism. Because when I see like a 16-year-old, speak to the United Nations and all these world leaders, all these powerful men and women, and she's just speaking truth to power, right? And like, I can't help but think, okay, if she's doing that, I can't just sit at home and do nothing. And so it's almost like she represents this call to arms for me, and I'm almost like a soldier that has enlisted in her army. This, she's this Joan of Arc figure, right? But I also think that unfortunately we still live in this cultural paradigm that needs heroes, right? And I think Greta herself, the way she tries to let other indigenous youth leaders kind of speak up, I think she's aware of this. Like I think she would prefer not to have this role if she could avoid it.
Yep.
But because of her autism or whatever, like she just, okay, I mean, if no one else saying it, I'll say it, But if, let's say, the world were listening to scientists, if governments were doing the right things, I think she'd really be happy just going back to live her normal life.
I actually would want to, okay, this is going to get a bit interesting now because a friend of mine could be watching this, and I'm going to have to bring up this thing that we had. So I don't want to give away too much private details, but essentially I had a debate with a friend of mine because she was of the opinion that Greta is really a troublemaker. Yeah, and I want to also present her perspective because she was someone that was present at that meeting where that particular protest happened, where Greta protested. And she found it disruptive. She felt that like Greta is a good for nothing, and more importantly, she had a meme out on her Facebook, and she contrasted Greta with her words, and then juxtaposed it with the meme's not created by her obviously, but it's obviously circulated around people who don't like Greta. So they featured another boy here, and he's a young scientist, so who devised some kind of technology to recycle plastic or something like that. But the idea is there, right? Which is this is someone who talks a lot, but this is someone who does something. And so it's meant to invoke negative sentiments towards Greta. And so I had this debate with her because I said, actually, Unsu, I'm very glad that you brought up your example, because I said you cannot just look at it that just because this young really inventive, really outstanding young scientist able to create something, that doesn't make him a better hero than Greta, because Greta actually invokes mass cultural change, right? And you are living, your anecdote actually proves my point, which is I said Greta also has this, and it's not even about comparing between one and the other, right?
Yeah.
We're not having a contest here about who's better than the other,
Absolutely.
right? It's just really about the fact that she is a very powerless person who's willing to speak truth to power. Incidentally, on that particular phase, right, there's a book in Singapore. I don't want to call it out, but it literally is called Speaking Truth to Power, and it featured civil servants. And to me, I'm like, that's not. These people are pretty powerful in their own right, okay? I mean, these are not powerless people speaking truth to power. I mean, you take people like us. We are the ones who are powerless. If we were to be a lot more vocal on the same level as someone like a Greta Thunberg, then we are speaking truth to power. Not people who are in the system and who just happen to have a dissenting voice. Yeah.
I'm mindful of a bias called survivorship bias.
Right.
Yeah, so Greta Thunberg could be one of the many who spoke truth to power, who succeeded in attempts to speak truth to power, whereas there were scores of many people who were either burned or crucified, or who were marginalized, or who were exiled or detained. I think it's quite scary to tell the world that you can now have all the license you have to go and speak truth to power, because I think I've personally had encounters with power where I spoke my truth, and the results of that was devastating. I was traumatized. So I think we all play different roles, and we need to be quite measured at different points in times, and there is no right or wrong answer. You can get it right the first time, or you can get it right the 10th time, or you can never even get it right any time in your life. You see, so it's just sometimes chance. It's and we play different roles. Some could be, just by serving in your home as the mother to your children. That could be an activism. That's the role and the contribution you're making to climate change, for example. Someone who's got voice and who's got supporters, that's her way. And I love what you said, it's not a contest. Like in a garden, you don't compare the worth of different plants based on the length of the plants or the trees, right? So everyone plays a different role, and it's that in that biodiversity where you have this beautiful change that's happening that might be invisible, but it's also happening.
This then also just to continue that point, right? Which is, I think what my example is also meant to illustrate is that, as according to what you just said, I think in Singapore at least, because I'm just using a personal example here, I think people have too long diminished the power of communication. So they look at someone like Greta Thunberg and they think that, oh, she's just a rebel rouser, right? And rebel rousing does no good in society, right? And that speaks to like how lowly we've placed the value of like just simply communicating truths and even communicating, negative emotions like angst, frustration. I mean, if we're going to talk about stuff like in Singapore about like we should provide more mental health support, we should be able to embrace this kind of voices, as ugly as they may sound, but these are the ugly realities of life. And someone like Greta Thunberg, again, not to, like, you're right, you shouldn't put everything on her, because there are many people like her, many people who just didn't make it to that platform, right, that stage of fame, but at the same time they have voices of frustration, and we are not acknowledging that they are worth just as much, in terms of popular discourse.
There's also a certain blindness, I think, to the way people call what she does disruptive, but then ignore the far greater disruptions that companies do to the environment, to the lives of people in poor neighborhoods, to low-wage workers. All these things are so much more disruptive, yet they don't get the attention of mainstream press, right? And yet, when someone like Greta Thunberg, just comes up and says one speech, oh wow, like that's all of a sudden like this big disruption. So I think there's an unfair bias there.
Okay.
I don't know, I just get this sense that in Singapore, like showing anger is deemed as bad. So you label anger as bad, but actually anger could be viewed as my boundaries have been violated, and I'm communicating to you that the boundaries have been violated. And anger is just an expression of that. But I think in Singapore, when we see anger as bad, then we do not condone it, we actually label it as bad. And then people tend to suppress it, and they suppress it and they shove it down their throats. And this is what's causing mental illness, for example. This is what's causing all the anxiety that we're seeing, OCD. So I think healthy expression of negative emotions should be labeled as healthy. It's perfectly healthy because it's an expression of your truth. You know, something has been violated, a need has not been met, and that's why you're exhibiting this. And in the field of social emotional learning, I have a friend who's an expert in this. He goes to the schools where you have you have children who are just difficult to deal with, and he's very counterintuitive approach is to sense and intuit what is the unmet social or emotional need of this child that is causing this child to throw a tantrum. If I can understand what is that and articulate it and then meet that need, then the tantrum, which is a symptom, will just be reduced or be addressed. Yeah. So I think we need to look at things in a very different way.
So thanks for bringing this up, because actually I have planned in one of our future episodes to do a focus video on anger, because the reason is that, and I'll speak a little bit on it just like a preamble, because I feel like, so not just in Singapore but in America and other places, right, politically it's like in very bad taste to be angry, to express anger, to criticize things in a harsh manner. And there's usually this call out for civility, right? And actually, I think Unsu, in a way, you're a fine shining example of that, because you're always so civil, and you're very careful to, keep your emotions in check while you express a certain point of view. And I've been kind of researching myself, like as to what anger actually serves as. Philosophically, some philosophies like Stoicism are against anger as a kind of emotion, because they look at it as a vice. Like anger is supposed to be temporary madness of the mind, and that's how some philosophers have treated it. I haven't been very satisfied with that answer. I do feel, of course, it's very nuanced and complex, because anger to me is an emotion. To be against an emotion is like saying that happiness is or jealousy is a vice, but emotions just arise out of you, and what matters more is how you take action with that particular emotion, and how you can make it constructive, but at the same time not lose the vividness of it, because it is so important. As you say, it serves a healthy function as well, in terms of the complexity of human psychology, but also like to communicate needs, right? Like a good example to me, when I was having a slight debate with a Stoic philosopher, is like, if someone murders my child, what do you expect me to feel like? To not be angry? I mean, I understand perhaps revenge killing is not the right method, but that doesn't leave out that doesn't exclude me being free to at least express anger. So yeah.
Yeah, there's this great book called Language of Emotions by Karla, McLaren, I think is her name, but she takes all these different emotions, and I think she really does a good job of describing the positive and the negative aspect to it. So exactly like what you said, she says the job of anger is to protect our boundaries, right? So if someone attacks me or whatever, and I'm basically, she even uses visualization. Like you can visualize like this force field around you, right? And there's been some breach, and you're using your anger to pretty much repair that. But the wrong use of anger is you actually take anger to direct it at someone, which is what a lot of people do, right? Rather than using it as your internal sentry. So yeah, I think anger would be a great sort of topic to discuss.
I think like the thing about anger is when you label it as bad, then the person whom you're chastising for being angry will then be laden with guilt and shame, which is far more base, which is far lower as an emotion and difficult to deal with than anger in itself. But when you normalize it, like what you mentioned, right, it's perfectly healthy to express it, then people say this anger is happening and it's not me, I'm beyond this. And so it's just, it's just an event that happens and then I get over and done with it. But when you hold on to it thinking that, oh my God, I was angry and so I should be ashamed and I should be guilty of it, then that's where we can't move on. Yeah, so I think it's what you sub-communicate under your response to someone else's anger that is more important than just telling the person, hey, that's really bad of you to be angry.
Yeah. You know what? I can connect several threads here. So number one, Greta, anger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Greta was invited by Arnold Schwarzenegger to a talk. I can't remember the name of the talk right now, but it's just like a couple of weeks back. And it was not Zoom, but online, right? Like she had to be online, and she just delivered. She wasn't physically in person at that particular summit. I can't remember which summit it was now, but she delivered it with such precise and clear anger, but clarity of mind as well, right? As to what's wrong with the current system. And actually, it also a lot of the things that she said meshes very well with what we have said in our degrowth video. She said things about like how you guys are spinning fables of economic growth. You are still making it sound like as if green technology will get us out of the climate change, but you guys have not budged even a single bit. And it was awesome, man. And that's the other point thing about anger to me. It inspires people as well. I mean, perhaps it has to be used constructively, right? Because if she went up there and she spewed a cup, vulgarities, of course that's going to be lost even on someone like me. But the idea was that she had a very this calculated, not disproportionate, very proportionate sense of anger and common sense and logic and content, right? To say what is wrong with the system, why you guys not doing more, why you guys continue to spin tales about that we are making progress when we are not. And she was invited by Arnold Schwarzenegger of all people. And Arnold is a conservative, as you probably know. He's a Republican, but he's kind of like a liberal Republican by now. So I'm sure that wouldn't have looked very nice for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
Did you get round to tell us who the most famous person you've met is?
Oh no, I haven't. So shall I go now? Because now we can go back to jumping to something lighter. Okay, I got two people in mind, and it's going to be very interesting because it will answer your question which you wanted to have about hobbies. Okay, so the first person I'm going to mention, just because I mentioned just now about acting, is I met Chow and Fatt. Yeah, and you won't believe how I met him. I won a Chow and Fatt look-alike contest. Yeah. So I was in Polytechnic. So I'm about 19 or 20 years old. At that time, he had a movie coming out. He was trying to make his way into Hollywood. So he had the first movie was Replacement Killers, where he started with Mira Sorvino. Yeah, if I got her name right. Second movie, he started with Mark Wahlberg. It's called The Corruptor. And at the time the movie wasn't screened yet, but there were trailers. And what happened was Great Wall City was running a look-alike contest. So there were two rounds. The first round there were like maybe 20 to 30 participants, and then out of the numerous number of us, they picked like 3. Yeah, that's right. There's 3 of us at the final round. So I was one of the 3, obviously. And what happened on the day itself of the final rounds was it was held in Great Wall City. It was entirely packed with full of people. So Chow and Fatt is not there yet. Yeah, so we had to do our skits, and they actually had a extra who I recognized from one of the Fame Awards thing that I mentioned just now. Yeah, and actually I met this guy in a LaSalle acting class as well, because he was very much like a Jim Carrey. He was very exaggerated, full of movement, full of expressions. Yeah. And he was basically our partner. He would co-act with us. So before our skit, we get like 5-10 minutes to work with him about what we can put up. Yeah. So I came prepared. I had a trench coat, I had the sunglasses, I had a toothpick to mimic what he looked like in A Better Tomorrow, which is the classic movie that he starred in. And with this guy, I came up with a skit that's very close to the trailer for the movie The Corruptor. And the funny thing about me was that I mix speaking English, Chinese, and Cantonese. Yeah, because I'm not very good with my mother tongue. Yeah, so in any case, I did all that. I threw a chair. I pretended to have a shootout. I pretended to die, and then I came up shooting him back. And so the crowd went wild. Yeah, it's funny. It was so spontaneous what I did on that day. And then finally, of course, when it came to the awards, that's where Chow and Fatt came up, and everyone screamed because we were going to shake hands. And I just hugged him. Yeah, and he's tall, man. I mean, he's taller than me. He's like 1.8 plus or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, but it just you know it's spontaneous. It just came out of me. I
Amazing.
just hugged him. Yeah, and he just asked me something. I think he just asked me what my name was, and just pretty much it. Yeah. So that's one of the most famous people
Oh,
I met.
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I
And
like that story.
incidentally about Chow and Fatt, right? Because going back to about famous people and character, he's been well known to be a great guy. My sister, who used to be an air stewardess, she even told me stories about how when he was flying on the plane, he wouldn't bother the stewardess at all. Like he would try to get his own food and drinks. Yeah, and of course, I mean, he said he has no kids. He's been said publicly. He said that he's going to donate all his wealth. He's very low key. He doesn't own a car. He has a very old phone, so he lives very, very simplistically. Yeah, and on his Hollywood movies, it's been already reported that he would treat the entire, like not just the cast, but like the production crew and everyone. Yeah, so he's a very, very generous man. Yeah, so that's why I love so much about him. So the second guy I have, and this gets into the hobby bit, is I met the student of Bruce Lee. So I used to practice martial arts. So Bruce Lee's martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, just to give the name. And so this person I met, his name is Ted Wong. So within Bruce Lee's students, he's one of the most like, how should I put it, low key, yeah. And he's Hong Kong. So funny enough, just like Chow and Fatt, he's also Hong Kong. And Ted Wong is actually a remarkable guy. So he stayed under the radar after Bruce Lee died for many years, and no one knew about him. And then eventually, I think 15 or 30 years later, he's pretty much, by the time he came out publicly, it's quite late in his life. And he said, what everyone's doing in terms of teaching Bruce Lee's art is not right, and so I want to set the record straight. And he showed a version of Bruce Lee's art that was very much true to what Bruce Lee displayed in his movies. Yeah, because everyone else was doing something different. Yeah. So anyway, this guy Ted Wong, my Sifu was obviously his student. So we hosted him, well, my Sifu hosted him a couple of times in Asia. So he came down and we had a chance to, you know, learn with him, train with him. We even had dinner with him, yeah. And he shared stories about Bruce Lee, yeah. And just to give you one sense of like what kind of guy he was. So when he was interviewed for a martial arts magazine, so this was in America, obviously. And what happened was that after the interview, right, they were like in some restaurant. So the interviewer, the journalist, is going back to his car and he gets mugged. Yeah, Ted Wong runs back and saves the guy, and he's one man versus three guys. Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened to the journalist. I think he was quite badly injured, but Ted Wong came out okay. Yeah, and this guy is really 60 or something like that. Yeah, he wasn't young anymore. Yeah, but I know why he was so good, because at the seminar, just to share a very interesting tidbit. So he said, like, you know, when it comes to punching, one of the things you can do, which he does, because he's a mechanical engineer, sorry, is that he would knock on a piece of steel or something really hard every night. It's annoying, he said to his wife, but he would just condition his knuckles, just knocking on this piece of steel. Yeah, like he got some kind of really hard metal, and he just do that for years, day after day. And so when he punches, even when at the seminar he just like tapped me like that, wow man, it felt like hitting hard metal, like Wolverine's adamantium or something like that. Yeah, so he was, yeah, really fascinating. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
The opposite story of like when I was in national service.
Yeah.
There'll be guys in my camp, right? That I knew like they would take a metal spoon and they would like knock their hands over and over to try and create a fracture so they could get downgraded. I mean, it's like the same
going
thing,
the wrong way.
but the
Different
opposite
purpose,
purpose.
yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. No, but yeah. So these are two of the most interesting, most famous men I've met in my life. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, going back to hobbies. So you wanted to share something about yourself.
Yeah, no, I just thought it'd be fun to share like a hobby that, you know, I'm pretty sure you guys would be very surprised by me. Maybe you won't, knowing this about me, but when I was young, I had a group of friends and we would play role-playing games together, like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And so, you know, actually this relates to Broken Dreams. Like, we always wanted to like finish a whole campaign together where you create these characters and you go through like series of adventures and you level up and everything. But for some reason, you know, every campaign we started, our characters would like die out really early on. Like we just wouldn't be able to finish it. And I mean, one of them was my fault because like I was the you know, you call it the dungeon master, right? The guy who sort of tells the story and guides everyone through. And I was a bit of a anal dungeon master, right? So like I would really follow the rules tightly, you know, and then, you know, my friends, they were just heading out on their adventure, and you would just randomly roll for encounters, and they would encounter wild boars, right? And then they would just fight these wild boars, and then because of the randomness of the dice rolls, like the wild boars killed them. Like even before they got to the main stage, right? And then like they would kind of protest, but I was like, I'm sorry guys, like you know, that's how the dice roll. So anyway, we never actually finished a campaign.
Right.
But last year, a friend of mine who's a game designer, he said he was gonna start like a D&D campaign.
Wow.
And he asked me if I was interested. So I said, yeah, sure. This is a lifelong dream that I've always wanted to do. So starting from the beginning of this year, we would get together on Monday nights over Zoom.
Oh, you do this over Zoom?
Yeah, we did this over Zoom.
Wow.
And then I played like a cleric who's kind of like a healer slash, you know, warrior character. And yeah, a few weeks ago we just finished our first campaign.
So how long did that take?
4 months, but then you know there was some Mondays where we couldn't make it, right?
Right,
so like, there
right.
might be 4 Mondays in a row where we couldn't make it. But so yeah, I mean, finally got to finish a campaign like 40 years later.
Wow.
No, okay, wait, let me ask you, Santosh. Do you even know how D&D games are played? Do you know?
No,
You don't-
not-
you don't know,
is
right?
it online or
Yeah,
is
so
it
this is a
over
very
a
important
board?
thing, because
Yeah.
I learned this myself.
It's a
not-
role-playing.
Yeah, because I learned this very recently as well. Okay, first thing, you don't watch TV, so you don't even know Stranger Things, right? Netflix, you watch that, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
So clearly, you know, if you watch that show, you have some sense of what a D&D game is like, right? Yeah. So let me ask you, is that very close to how the game is actually played? That's one. Because I see that there's a lot of imagination that's required, and it's not very fixed in terms of the rules. That's what I think. Yeah, because I only learned about this very recently. That someone, one of my friends, was explaining to me. He was watching D&D games played online. Yeah, and I was like, what's so fascinating about that? And he actually explained to me like it's a lot less like technologically, right? It's not going to be as fancy as watching a video game of the 21st century, but he says it's still very interesting. So can you actually explain for even our dear friend here how a game is played?
Yeah, I'd say it's in its essence, it's collaborative storytelling. So there are rules. There are actually rule books. So every role-playing game is centered around a set of rule books, which determine like, you know, your characters will have stats. You know, like in Dungeons and Dragons, you have strength, intelligence, wisdom, and then you can pick a class, which is what your sort of skill set is. You could be a thief, a warrior, you know. And there's a guy called the Dungeon Master who creates the adventure, or you know, you can buy pre-set adventures, which is what they played in Stranger Things. There was like a preset adventure, which tells you, okay, like in this room in a dungeon, there's this monster, this treasure, whatever, right? And then so the Dungeon Master knows everything, and then for everyone else, it's like the fog of war. It's a mystery, right? They don't know what's ahead, and the looseness comes in the fact that the players can really choose to do anything. I mean, the Dungeon Master can't control that aspect. So as a character, like I might choose to steal from my friend, you know, or like if you encounter like someone in a tavern, you know, I might choose to, you know, like I don't know, you like banter with that person in a different way, right? So there's a certain amount of unpredictability in it, which makes it fun. But yeah, it's really the essence of it is that collaborative storytelling. And I do credit it for the fact that at the age of 11, doing all this stuff, I think it did trigger my imagination to the point where, you know, later on I would take that into like, I don't know, filmmaking or other pursuits.
Yeah, I actually would agree a lot with that, because I think, I mean, I myself have a, you know, interest in child developmental psychology, and I think there's something to be said about how games are conceptualized and played right now. And I mean, I'm going to make a mild social commentary here, but I think it's very sad when, like, let's say if I see parents bring their kids out, say for dinner or something like that, and they just put like YouTube for their kids to watch. I mean, I think, I mean, of course I understand, look, being a parent myself, how you know, frustrating it can be to you know, take your kids out for dinner, and then if they are noisy and, you know, disruptive, I understand the frustrations of dealing with that. But I do, you know, I'm speaking this commentary. I mean, why I'm talking about this is because it aligns with the idea about games and how we should brainstorm better ways to engage with our children, right? Not just flashing them YouTube videos or even video games, even the current video games that even I like to play them, but I recognize, yes, that it's very rule bound. There are only certain things you can do. It's definitely not tapping on that storytelling element, and I personally haven't tried a D&D game, but I would love to have my children play that as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. Actually, there is a deep science behind the power of collaborative storytelling. I have a friend who I teach innovation in large organizations at a university with. He plays role-playing games, so it's in French. He's French, so he calls them jeux de rôle, and he plays them very often. And he says it's very, very crucial in. It's got a very crucial instructive element to it, and incidentally, in addition to playing role-playing games, he also does improvisation, and forum theater. And these are like 3 different art forms that can actually help rebuild and heal our human civilization. And why do I say that? In any meeting that you're engaging with someone on a discussion with, right? Collaborative storytelling, it's about looking beyond zero-sum dynamics of determining whether one person is right or the other person is right, to how can 1 + 1 become 3? How can we mix and match in the spirit of alchemy, mix something to create something that is much bigger than the whole which is much bigger than the sum of its individual parts or its constituent elements, or even just one of the constituent elements. So I think this has got a very powerful instructive lens to it. If students and kids start to learn doing improvisation, forum theater, or collaborative storytelling, then we will be able to construct new narratives around the kind of world we want to live in that does not deprive one party of his or her rights, but that includes everyone's rights. So I think that's very powerful, and this is what we actually do when we teach innovation. It's about looking at things beyond just the surface layer and the surface layer arguments, and trying to find a win-win between different parties.
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned his name before. I mentioned it again, Alfie Kohn. Look him up, because a lot of what you just said, it's about the design of the educational system, and Alfie Kohn is someone who's a fierce advocate for reconstituting it, making it much more less academic, less technocratic, and a lot more livelier, questioning this kind of what do you call it, zero-sum game kind of thinking, right? Yeah.
You mentioned there was a book that he wrote about the case for no competition.
No contest. The case against competition.
Against competition.
Yeah, it's an old book actually. It's about 1997, if I'm not wrong. There's even a 30th year anniversary edition of the book. Yeah. So like I said, I think we should maybe talk about it one day.
And I think we see this playing out in our parliamentary debates, right? For example, there's the ruling party versus the opposition. You can see it just by the way they're talking at one another, where one party wants to dominate and see itself as the winner of any debate. Now, these are the fruits of seeds that were planted when they were young. Something went wrong in the conditioning of these parliamentarians that resulted them in looking at debates or discourse as zero-sum. And what you're saying is there's something that is so damaging in this ethos of competition in our education system that has caused the spectacle that we are seeing in parliamentary discourse and discussions. And I think we need to look at that very seriously.
Yeah, you know what? That's a funny thing. Everything you just said, right? I have a friend who kind of encapsulate this whole entire thing you just said into one very simple thing: cannot lose face. Yeah, because that's how he actually describes the PAP. In terms of its behavior, in terms of the kind of policies that it unleashes, right? Which is, he thinks that the PAP, and in terms of its contestations against the opposition, the PAP is actually willing to be moved to more progressive policies if they don't lose face in being the first one to come up with it. So there's this thing, and again, it's just a common saying. Some people say that the PAP has stolen ideas from other parties. Maybe the idea has been proposed years ago, but here comes the PAP now with its own brand and own version of it. And I mean, yeah, there may be some, some truth to that, in the sense that, culturally speaking, we have this ethos, as you mentioned, of like cannot lose face. We cannot be the ones to like lose out to the competition. Like if they propose something, we got to either one up them or just tarnish their idea first. Then we come up with our own that can be remarkably similar, and yeah, claim all the bragging rights, right? So.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the Nicolas Cage movie Face Off. I might be
Yeah.
misremembering it, but I think there were
Yeah.
like these melodramatic scenes where we'd be going face.
Yeah. No, that's
Face
right.
off.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, we haven't heard your hobby, and I'm very interested to know that because you sound so serious, man, Santosh. You don't sound like you got a life, so I want to hear something that you got to do that you do leisurely. And please don't say nature walking, because I heard that from you before. So something else, please.
I love poetry.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the spirit of broken dreams,
Yeah.
there is this beautiful Japanese art of kintsugi, KINTSUGI.
Okay.
Yeah. So the story goes, you've got a bowl. The bowl falls on the ground and it's broken into different pieces. Yeah. And so these are the different broken pieces of our dreams, right? And what they do in that culture is they don't throw away those broken pieces. Instead, they bring it to the table. They have this gold lacquer, and they apply the gold lacquer on the edges of the broken pieces, and they put it all together. Yeah, and now the new whole that came from the individual constituent broken pieces looks much more beautiful than the original piece before it was broken. So I love looking at art. I love all forms of art, poetry, fine arts, performing arts, the healing arts. It's something that I'm also fascinated with, like craniosacral therapy, healing collective trauma through authentic relating. So this is the kind of things I do in my free time. We meet up with friends and we talk about, let's say, our past trauma and our unprocessed, undigested emotions and feelings. Yeah, and I think this brings our conversations to a new level, our friendships to a new level of intimacy. Yeah, so I just trying to find a way to.
It's just funny hearing you saying you get together to talk about trauma as a form of leisure.
Exactly.
I know that's what's beautiful about you. Santosh. I think like you embody playfulness, so you don't actually have to do something that is specifically or overtly playful. I think that's what I sense.
Yeah. Okay, but I have a tough question for you actually, because you're not the only person in my life that I know who tries to revisit traumatic aspects of their past and tries to come out of it, right, as a more as a more complete person, if I may put it in that language. But here's my question. It's a tough one, so get ready. When will you ever get out of trauma? Will there ever be a day that you wouldn't talk like this? Will there ever be a day you tell me, Douglas, I'm actually okay right now. I'm completely healed. There's no more trauma. I'm a good man now. I don't know. Tell me. Is there a day? Would there ever be such a day?
I think holding on to the idea of healing in
Yeah.
itself does not promote healing. So if you are clinging on to it, and if you think that healing can be like instant, or you need to arrive at a certain stage in healing,
Right.
like if this is something to be attained, then that defeats the whole purpose. So it's just about flowing with life.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that in itself is, a question that's difficult to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you should pursue healing for the sake of it.
No,
Yeah.
it's So don't get me wrong, because to me, I'm not also pushing that this thing should be done instantaneously. I'm clearly against the idea that. In fact, I want to talk about a book later on where it's about quick fixes and how too much of our public policy is designed with a quick fix in mind, and I'm very much against that, philosophically. So I guess so let me give some context to this, because when I was in university studying, I studied psychoanalysis. So just for some viewers to know, psychoanalysis is not straight up empirical psychology. It's kind of founded from the school of Sigmund Freud. And if you have this image in mind of like someone laying down on this couch right now and Unsu being the therapist, there's a talking therapy here. So Unsu, as an example, he will be the psychoanalyst trying to talk to this person through their person's past and try to make sense of it, right? And eventually come up with a good story that helps this individual breach, their trauma and certain aspects of their clearly some kind of behavior that's not very healthy right now. So I've studied that a little bit, and in fact I have some kind of small interest in it. So But here's the thing, right? As we move on with just the time of the day, in terms of modern psychology and stuff like that, then there is something to be questioned about the empirical or evidence-based approach of the evidence for psychoanalysis. Yeah, and there are books on this kind of topics. So I guess to me, I get it. Like on the one hand, it is a very deep intrinsic process. There is no evidence-based outcome. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm curious, how long does that journey go? How does it go? And what's as you say, even if there's no end stage, right? What's the manifestations? What's the benefits? I hate to use that word, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
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 I think at the end of the day, it's about just rebuilding connection within ourselves and with others, and with like the world around us. And there are many means and modalities or vehicles for doing that.
Yeah.
Some people like pottery. Some people like painting, arts, having a nature walk with a friend.
Yep.
Yeah, or watch instead of going to the movies, watching an episode of BTS. That could be a great.
Well, at least you know one pop culture reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think everyone needs to find his or her way.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with you that as esoteric as what your hobby sounds like to some people out there, but I actually encourage people to try it. Like I think they should try pottery, poetry, being just in a group of people, just to speak about yourself authentically. And even if the people in the room are not therapists, they're not trained in that sense, but sometimes we just want that authenticness, right? And I think even just having a coffee session like us having it right now is in itself can be very healing. Yeah, which actually comes to mind. I actually wanted to ask you guys, that session you guys had on Friday with that person, that session with the 8.
I don't know if we should talk about that.
Shouldn't talk about it?
Should
Okay.
I think it's confidential.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then let's move on to something else. Shall I pose you guys a question?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So my question here is, because we're just talking about hobbies and stuff like that. What talent do you wish you have? Yeah.
I have to think about that for 5 minutes, man.
Oh, okay. Just think. Okay, why not you go ahead?
Wow, a talent I wish I had.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to go first? Since
Sure.
I posed the question. Okay, so I'll answer it first. Okay, this is just me saying it, and I know what I'm about to say is pretty much bogus, but I'm just going to say it. I think when it comes to drawing and music making, I think it's either you have it or you don't. Yeah, I don't believe that practice will make you get to that kind of stage. I think you either have a very good, like there's a special kind of architecture of the mind and of your sensory system you've got to possess to be able to draw, because you've got to visualize, you've got to be able to produce something that's totally original. And the kind of preciseness you need to have with lines and colors. Like I don't feel I have it. I don't think I will ever have it. Yeah, even though I've tried my hands at trying to draw. Same with music. I tried my when I was young. I love Sting, so I wanted to learn the bass guitar. Yeah, but I had this really profound saddening experience, which I'll just put it on you guys first. So when I went for my music classes, I was usually with other people, right? And so I could hide how bad I was, because those guys can play better, and I'll just be pretending that I can play as well as that. One day I had to do a private class. It was just me and my teacher. And so now I'm made to play for myself. And then my teacher said, "Ayo, you never go to disco, is it?" Like he's just like astonished how bad I was. Yeah. And the truth is, I was exposed. I could not tell a G chord, a A chord, or whatever. I just couldn't. I mean, of course I can tell there's a difference, but I can't identify it. Like I just can't tell, like, am I playing an A chord or G chord or whatever. So anyway, I knew that's the end of my musical dreams. Yeah. So broken dreams. Yeah. So if I could wish for talent, yeah, either it's going to be music or drawing. Yeah, either one of them. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I would agree with you on music for sure. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a rock star?
Yeah.
Drawing, of course. There have been many times where I wish I could just draw, because you imagine something, and yeah, I just wish I could draw it out. I think I would add cooking to it. I think as I get older, I realize that cooking is such a great way of bringing people together, and yeah, I wish I had that talent.
I don't think cooking is okay. To cook like a fine chef that clearly requires a lot more expertise. But I think just to cook as someone that can serve, like dishes that would not stink and will not taste bad when your family tastes it, I think that's not unreasonable to
No, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think
Yeah.
it's something I could work on
Yeah.
and develop if
Yeah.
I put in the effort. Yeah.
Yeah, I think along the lines of cooking, my mom cooks amazing Indian food, home cooked food, and I don't know how to cook for nuts. And yeah, if there's something I want to learn, it's to like understand the culture and to like preserve it and to like even pass it down. Yeah, so I want to like try to learn and pick up the culture of like, let's say, Indian traditional cooking. Yeah, and yeah, I think like the different indigenous and traditional cultures that I think my mom grew up with. Yeah, there's like some beauty to that, and I would really want to like pick it all up.
So
Yeah,
is
and learn
the
from my
way
mom.
that she cooks, I don't have great knowledge obviously about Indian cuisine.
Yeah.
But would you say what your mom cooks, right? Is it non-mainstream? Does it come with something idiosyncratic with it, or how would you describe like?
I don't think
what-
you'll be
what
able
you-
to find in any like Indian restaurant in Singapore.
Right. Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's a strange feeling, right? But it's just cooked with love and it's authentic. And I think that's what matters.
Have you ever tried proposing to her to have a restaurant, to
Yeah,
do
there
some kind
was-
of business?
So there was a friend who told me like you should film her doing it. Yeah, and because a lot of this is intuitive, she's picked it up, but she's unable to articulate in very explicit terms what she's doing. I should be like filming it to understand like, the way like she's moving, the way she's thinking, those little like adjustments she's making as she cooks, and yeah, it's really an art form. It's beyond a science. Like if she told me the exact same science of like the quantities and the way they should be mixed and what should be done, like in what sequence, I would never be able to conjure up the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that she's finessed
Yeah.
in like the 60 years of her existence. Yeah, that I will never be able to match up to. And so I think just filming it and preserving this, I think that would be like a life dream of mine. I
Yeah.
would love to. And even like the stories from my dad, like when he was young, yeah, like back in those old days, and yeah, I think like those are family histories that I would really want to preserve. Yeah, so that's a hobby I would like to like take up.
Yeah, I should say anyway, even though we're talking about cooking as a hobby, but there are socio-political dimensions to it. One of the things that me and another friend of mine who's very, very, how should I put it? Like he's constantly ranting against the commercialization of food. Like to him, he thinks that cooking, is not just an art, but it's an essential skill people should actually have. And he doesn't mean like people need to cook like Gordon Ramsay or anything like that. But he just thinks that when we what's the word for it? Like offload our eating habits to just buying takeout food, eating outside, dining out, right? We're actually missing that experience of like understanding food, and what goes on in food, and what in terms of not just in terms of the ingredients, right? But in terms of like the intrinsic satisfaction you get out of eating food that's actually cooked, right? Not just, of course, food that's cooked in the commercial kitchen is still food. It's not that it isn't, but you're missing out a lot of knowledge from not knowing how it's done. And also the other important thing for him is that, and I agree a lot in this because it aligns with the idea about nutrition. So, do you know the writer Michael Pollan?
Yes.
Yeah. So Michael Pollan, for example, he's a very famous writer on food and nutrition. So he talks about he has this book called In Defense of Food, and it's like 30 rules, if I'm not wrong. I read it quite some time ago. It's an old book by now. But one of the things he does bring up is that even if you're going to eat fast food, try to cook it yourself, because it changes your entire relationship with fast food.
Wow.
Yeah, you actually understand how much oil goes into it. You understand that this is not meant to be something to be consumed daily, or even as a treat. It's something that, yes, you can take in every now and then, but it's because the whole entire experience of making fast food is very laborious and quite, probably not very pleasant actually. So yeah, and there was actually just a recent article on it's either Aeon or Psyche, Psyche, which talks about how French children are very different from the children from the US, because they have a very different experience with food. They develop a much more acute sense of taste, and so even if they're eating, so when they're eating bad food, they know it's bad food. Whereas someone that's left out from this kind of experiences, would just treat bad food as just something to be eaten and not recognizing the kind of intrinsic value that it brings to the body.
The French people who invited me to their homes on weekends when I was studying, they were anti-instant food, they were anti-McDonald's, anti-American imperialism, because they felt it. They felt the infringement in their culture. And I could totally sense that, like, they had a very healthy eating habit, and that was built up from many years of healthy habits. That the parents actually took pains to preserve in their culture. And I think we need to have something like that.
I mean, your mom would be a good role model.
My mom would be a good, and I think just beyond cooking, it's about like even learning how to then grow some of them. Like not grow all your ingredients, but just start to grow some spices, some herbs for a start, right? Because the thousands of people it takes to get food from the farms or the fields to the table, that's completely invisible when we just finish it up in 10 minutes. So I think learning how to experience and to appreciate like the entire chain of value and of people and food exchanging and ingredients exchanging hands, I think that's something that we have kind of lost touch with. So just like having maybe a gratitude practice. It need not be like growing your own food, right? But just like trying to imagine and visualize, like it came to the supermarket, we got the ingredients from the supermarket and now we're cooking it together. But before and prior to the supermarket, what happened? Like just having the exploration for 10 minutes before we tuck in, that would be an amazing experience for kids.
Now I have to confess, I'm getting quite hungry. Someone back there in the house has made some crab. I can smell it, and we were talking about food. So I'm very, very distracted right now.
Yes. Okay, why not let me ask you, what's the last good meal you had? Okay, obviously you're gonna go with your mom's cooking, right?
That would be like my mom's cooking. It would be dal with rice, so lentil, dal, rice, a few beans, and tofu. That's a very simple, with some like vegetables, green vegetables.
Go for it. Even if it's eat out food, that's okay.
I mean, last night we had some famous duck rice.
Oh,
there's a place in Star Vista, I think, but I don't know what it's called. But
I go to Star Vista sometimes. I go there for ice steak actually. But there's a duck place at the basement.
I'm not sure.
Okay. You can't even remember the place you went to?
No, my wife brought it back home.
Right. Oh, brought it back home. Right. I see it. I see. Okay. Anyway, for me, I'm very simple in terms of my culinary taste. It's durian season, and I love durian. So I just had some last night. So it's funny actually. This is an interesting story. So I have this vendor that I routinely call upon to send durian over to my place. And so I had, I'm someone that goes with different types of durians. I don't just stick to one. So I had, a couple of different types of durians that I wanted. And what happened was the vendor called me and he said that the driver that was coming into Singapore was caught, had a positive COVID test. So he had to U-turn and go back. So hence my durian order could not get through. But, so he had to actually ask me to just choose the really, really premium one, which is Black Gold. And I had that. So for me, actually, when it comes to food, and I think you've asked me something about this before, about my dietary habits. So I generally try to go with very minimally processed food. And if I do have it, I keep it to 1 day a week. So Saturday is a day that I'm allowed freedom, liberty, to eat whatever I want. But the rest of the days, generally, I'm ensuring that what I eat is, which goes with Michael Pollan's advice actually, that to eat food that your grandmother would recognize and that doesn't have more than 5 chemical names. In fact, it's very easy to remember Michael Pollan's advice. In brief, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants, and it's essentially it.
Fascinating.
So I think that's really, in fact, I would tell for a lot of people who want to lose weight or they want to improve their health, nutrition really is not something that's that complicated. I understand that there's a lot of approaches out there: keto diet, paleo diet, Atkins diet, but simply Michael Pollan's advice is simple enough. I mean, I'm a meat eater. I will always need some meat. Just based on the physical activities I engage in. But for most people, like, as long as you lead a pretty normal life, just eat real food, man. And actually, the reason about not eating too much, which goes with this Japanese concept. I can't remember the name right now, but the idea is that you want to be 80% full. You don't want to be 100%. So you don't want to be bloated, but you want to be just good enough to last, a good couple of hours until the next meal. So
yeah, according to the principles of Ayurveda, which I'm also doing a fair bit of research on, it's just the size of your palm. Like you need to close your fingers and you make it into a fist. This is just the amount that you need actually for a meal.
So the idea with this is that generally, if you look at, like, say, protein, carbs, and other stuff, which means vegetables or healthy fats, you want like one fist size. I would modify it for carbs though. I think for most people they should reduce their carb intake. Like even I take very few carbs. I mean, everyone's got to find their own journey, but that's the idea. And unless you have special needs, special dietary needs, generally this works out well for most people.
And while I don't watch Netflix, a friend of mine told me there's a Netflix documentary, and they said that the ancient, like the old gladiators of Rome, they were all vegetarians. So they analyzed the bone sample.
Oh, I think I know which show is.
And like this were the strongest gladiators of that time. They were all vegetarians. So it's.
So I don't want to get into this debate here because I don't have the knowledge as well.
I know.
And I know that, like, what show you're referring to, because there is this drive by the vegan movement to show that you can still be physically fit and excellent even if you are on a vegan diet. I don't dispute that it is definitely possible. I just think everyone needs to find their own experience. I tried it myself. It didn't go with me, sad to say. So, but I do recognize actually the moral imperative of trying to eat less meat. I do think there is some substance to that. For the sake of having a greener world, we may have to reduce excessive intake of meat, or at least how the industry is manufacturing meat right now. So do you want to call it to a close?
I'm hungry, man.
Sure.
Let's do that.
Okay. So anyway, thanks for today's session. I think we went through again a dazzling mix of topics. Always interesting, entertaining, and I actually have to say I look forward to the next one already. So yeah. Okay, thanks guys for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.